Giant Goofballs, a New York Giants podcast. Are you a goofball that loves Giants football? If so, sit back and relax. Except you, that person driving. Sit up and keep your eyes on the road. Your ears, though, can still listen as we talk about the team that both excites and frustrates us so much. And now, here are your goofball hosts, Drew and Rob.
Welcome, fellow goofballs, to Two Giant Goofballs, the New York Giants podcast. I am Drew, joined as always by...
I'm me, Rob. Let me turn on this light.
Turn off the lights and I'll glow. Oh, yes. I don't know why I hear lights and I still, 30 years later, think of Ice Ice Baby. I don't know why.
Ding, 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 ding.
It was a good song. Yes. All righty, guys. So today, we're going to break down the top 10 pass rushers in New York Giants history. So, obviously, pass rush comes from a lot of positions. It can come from a defensive end, can come from a linebacker, can come from a defensive tackle. We have all those positions covered in this top 10.
Oh, yeah. There's going to be some that are going to be no-brainers, and some will be like, oh, damn, he was that good?
I got to say, the first one we're going to go over was kind of a shocker to me. He made the list. I'm going to say that right off the bat. So, yeah, it's such a big position in New York Giants history. You know, you think about all the great players we had, and yeah, this is probably the most impressive group we have. That is so extremely top heavy. It's not even funny. Like, you could sit there and legitimately say we have three of the best people to ever play football as pass rushers specifically. It's just absolutely insane. You know, so you know, I think it's just absolutely amazing. And I think it's some of these names here, I was kind of shocked how high they even were actually on the list as far as what they'd accomplished in their career as a whole, too. So, you know, and there's one or two names here that I think people kind of forgot how good they were, because I didn't even think of them as top 10 in franchise history there in that case. So, yeah, so definitely want to go ahead and let's go over this stuff here. Let's go. We got a couple comments here before we start. Let's get the suspense.
Ooh, ready?
Because number 10, I'm telling you, was like, wow for us. Like, wow, this is the guy. Like, I'm still kind of shocked this is the guy. We got Tudo here, who you know, is on the G Nation show there quite often there. Obviously, by the picture, has been working out quite much as well there. So we have to be very nice to him so he doesn't beat us up. He said, massive salutes, mate. Just drop by to pay our respect from G Nation fam. Appreciate it, man.
Appreciate it, bud.
Anybody who's not aware with G Nation, by the way, go ahead and check that out on YouTube as well and subscribe there as well. Good guys there. I popped on their show a couple times and always a good talk. And it's one of those things, if you really like the Giants and like to sit there for a while, it's a long show. I think they do Thursday nights, if I remember correctly there. I see the
Thursday
notifications. So we're done recording. Pop onto there and you can continue the Giants discussion going there. Deb also asked, was there any argument over number one? I think it's clear cut who number one is going to be.
Yeah, I think it's safe to say.
Let's see here. And he also says, Tudor says, Drew, we're pro rugby players in Italy, boss. Yeah. I would just let you score the goal, dude. I wouldn't. I don't even know they call it a goal in rugby. Sorry, I'm not too much into rugby stuff. I watched it. I got mad respect people who play it. I just don't know too much on the rules because that's like football with no pads.
Yeah, I wanted to learn how to play it a few years back. Now I'm so old.
That's legit. All righty. Let's break out into number 10. Now, we had a little bit of a discussion as far as number 10 and who is going to be because, you know, for the most part, when you're going over the best pass rusher to go, okay, who had the most sacks, who was there for a while, blah, 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 that kind of stuff there.
10 years average.
Yeah. We had 9 players who were pretty obvious that, hey, these people belong. These people should be on this list, no doubt about it. Number 10 became a little bit more difficult. So, you know, we looked at players like Eric Howard, who played end and tackle in the 80s there. He had 30.5 sacks in 122 games. We looked at Carl Banks. You know, we've talked about Carl Banks quite often in the show. Obviously, Rob and I have a tremendous amount of respect for the man. He should be the damn Hall of Fame. It's a freaking crying shame he's not. 36 sacks in 126 games. So decent, respectable, all-time great, not quite. Matthias Kiwanuka, who was purely a pass rusher special. That was the guy that you popped in basically to go ahead and get that sack. 38 and a half sacks in 120 games. Again, not tremendous. I mean, don't get me wrong. All those three players had good careers. What we're looking for, as Will Smith would say in Men in Black, the best of the best, sir.
Sir. You know all with this.
And I'm not sure those guys get in the top 10 over who we're about to say, who had a very shorter career with the Giants. Didn't get to nearly 120, we got anyway, basically the 120s for all three of those guys. He didn't get nearly that many games, but he almost had as many sacks. That's the scary part. And it's a guy that Rob and I were talking about. I'm like, you know what? You don't think of this guy as being that good when he was a New York Giant. And I think part of the issue is he played. Yeah, he played when we were crap. We had one decent year with this guy out of the 3 seasons he was with us. We went to the playoffs the first year he was with the team. The rest of them was the downfall, the start of the end of the Giants, good times there and go into the really dark ages, so to speak, that we hopefully just got out of. That man is Olivier Vernon, who signed with the Giants from the Dolphins in 2016. Played with us from 16 to 18. So he said just 3 seasons. Before that, he played for the Dolphins 12 to 15, the Browns from 19 to 20. In his time with the Giants, 39 games. 39 games. We're talking literally 1/3 of the games of the guy, the guys we just talked about that we're putting in like a honorable mention kind of category. And in that, he had 22 sacks. So if you do like the per game ratio, he would have had, if he had the length of career that Eric Howard, Carl Banks, and Matthias Kiwanuka had with the Giants, he would have had about 66 sacks at that point there.
Yeah.
Even more. You could say about 70 sacks. That's a very respectable number. In fact, that's a number that probably, if he had been a Giant for that long and had that kind of production, would probably have him at number 8, just looking at a quick look at the list real quick. Overall, for his career, he has 63 and a half sacks, assuming he's done playing. He had a big injury at the end of 2020 and hasn't played since. He was hoping to play last year, but nobody picked him up. So, hopefully somebody does pick him up there. I mean, anytime you have 63 and a half sacks on a career, that's impressive. That's a good career.
That might be a guy you want on your bench teaching young guys.
Yeah. I mean, as serious thing is, at this point, he's going to be 33. He hasn't played in 2 full seasons. So I don't think, I don't think he'll be, somebody that you'll see on a, on a roster again, probably. I think he's probably done. But in the end, to have 9 seasons and get 63 and a half sacks, that's a very highly respectable career. And he only had 1 season ever over 10 sacks, and that was with the Dolphins. It wasn't even with the Giants. But he was that consistent, I'm going to get you 6 to 9 sacks. No, I didn't say 69. 6 to 9 sacks. And there's something to be said about a guy who's consistent. We'll go over some of the guys in the list, and I was looking at their numbers, and I was like, hold on a second. I'm kind of shocked by some of the numbers. Some of the guys like, I don't want to name the names yet, but we don't want to give it away.
Yeah, not yet.
But some of the guys that would go like 10 sacks and the next season have 4. Like there was people that had that on a consistent basis.
Yeah.
This guy was a consistent 6 to 9 sacks every single season. And because of that, piped out a pretty decent career for himself.
Yeah, safe to say.
Yeah. All righty. On to the easier ones, the more obvious, the ones that we knew we were going to be on the list, just a matter of where they'd fall. Number 9 is a favorite from my childhood. I enjoyed watching this man play a lot when he was, because he played during the time period where I really got into Giants football as a whole. When I finally was old enough to kind of really understand and love football. Obviously, as much as the Big Blue Wrecking Crew days were fun to watch, I was in like diapers for the start of it. So, there was only so much I could get into at that point. But this guy was in his peak when I was watching. Plus, he's a Jersey boy from Patterson. Got a root for the Jersey boy.
Let's go, Jersey.
Keith Hamilton, 4th round pick in 1992, back when I was in 4th grade. Played with the Giants from 92 to 03. That's a full 12 seasons. In those 12 seasons, 63 sacks. Keep in mind, folks, this is from the defensive tackle position. He had 2 seasons over 10 sacks. He was 4th place for Defensive Player of the Year in 2000 and 2nd team All-Pro that season. Back then, you didn't see that really from defensive tackles. The only guy in that era that you consistently saw really being a pass rushing beast from the defensive tackle position. Actually, there's 2 I can think of off the top of my head. John Randall and Warren Sapp. Those were the guys. Most tackles were the Gilbert Browns of the world. I'll use that as a reference because he played in that generation. The big fat bodies that just clogged the hole. That's what the job was back then. So I got to give it up to the guy because what he was doing was just not a normal thing back then. And he did it very well. And not only that, he still stopped the run. He was still a good run defender as well. It wasn't like he gave that up and sacrificed that to go after the quarterback. Once he saw as a pass, right for the quarterback. But he sat back for a second to verify that he wasn't going to get run.
He was really good at killing the man with the ball.
Yeah. And did it for quite a while. I mean, 12 seasons is a respectable long career in a sport where the average player, when he plays for 3 seasons, that's 4 times as long.
Yeah.
And he was a leader. He was a very feisty guy. I remember there was like a fight in the parking lot one time, even with a fan he got into because the fan was talking trash. Like this, he was a legit old school lunch pail guy that just went to work, did his thing, and did it well.
He'd clobber you with his lunchbox if you talked.
Listen, smack you with the lunchbox.
Yeah. What a lunchbox stay in the face. Whack!
I dented my limited edition Smurf box.
Great. Smurfette is ruined.
No, that was the only girl.
Yes, right. Like, why is she the only girl? What happened there?
They explained that in the movies. I'm not sure if the TV show ever did, but in the movies they did. So,
there's the new ones?
Yeah, the new ones. You just gotta watch the new ones. You just gotta watch it. It's good. It's a good thing. So, alrighty. Number 8. Oh yes, got tucked into there. Justin Tuck, 3rd round pick, 2005, had the coolest face mask known to man. 2005 to 2015 he played, so full 11 seasons, 66 and a half sacks for his career. I'm just kind of giving career numbers with him because he played 1 season away from the Giants there, played with the Raiders his very last season, and yeah, it's the Raiders. They don't count. Actually, that's why verifying it real quick while we're talking. It was 2 seasons, but he had 60 and a half of the 66 and a half sacks with us in 9 years. It's pretty respectful.
Yeah.
That's like, 7.5 sacks a season.
If my
internal math is working correctly there. He had 4 seasons over 10 sacks. All 4 of those were with us. In fact, his last season with us, he had 11 sacks. I remember being all ticked off. They let him go. I said, why would you let this guy go? He's got 11 sacks. You're not going to pay this man?
Yeah,
obviously, they made the right move. 5 sacks the next season. He had 5 sacks in the first year with the Raiders, and we won the second one. So, they kind of knew there was not much left in the tank there. 2-time Pro Bowler, 1-time first-team All-Pro, 1-time second-team All-Pro. The big one that we all remember him for, 2-time Super Bowl champion. He was part of those dominating pass rushes that we had there back in the Eli Manning years, obviously. And like I said, I think that's what most people I feel like remember him for was the face mask as well. It was crazy unique. For those who might have been newer to Giants fandom or a little younger, feel free to go ahead and look it up. This thing had more bars than Bourbon Street. It was insanity. Like,
I always thought it reminded me of Shredder.
Exactly, Shredder in the first Ninja Turtle movie, especially because actually, you know what? What was the Shredder after he did the ooze? The second one,
Super
Mega
Shredder.
Is that what they called it? Super Shredder, whatever it was. That was it. He was Super Shredder.
Yeah.
He was
shredding up the sacks.
He was a fun guy. He was a guy that the teammates really enjoyed being around. He was a true leader like that. So that's why he's remembered so well amongst Giant fans, is because one, unlike Olivier Vernon we talked about initially, he played in the good days. He played when he had Super Bowl rings. So, you're going to remember him fondly because of that. But it's also he was a damn good player and he was a fun, likable guy. So, it's a wild and crazy guy. All righty. Before we go on, because the next one, we've already talked about this guy recently because he just entered the Ring of Honor this year. Actually, this past year, I should say, now that last year's over. We do got a couple more comments there. Tudo said, American football is too soft for us, boss. We don't wear any helmet, body armor, or diapers, boss. We're the real true warriors on the battlefield. Listen, that's, like I said, rugby's legit. John, he's on YouTube today instead of Facebook, says,
What's up, John?
What a rush. Matthias Kiwanuka is my daughter's first big word. Everyone was like, she just said Kiwanuka? That's awesome.
That's fantastic.
Oh, man. And Tudor says, Drew, the BBK will be on. 45 minutes made. Hope to see you there, boss. Yeah, definitely, man. Definitely. Feel free to drop, if you're still on the show here. I don't know if you're getting ready for that one now. But feel free to go ahead and drop the link even in the comments section. So anybody else wants to come on over and watch when we're done as well, feel free. All righty. On to the next guy. The man known for the best flat top in the NFL history. Leonard Marshall, playing with the Giants from 1983 to 1994. 12 seasons. In the 12 seasons, 80
couple good years too.
83 and a half sacks. It's pretty damn impressive. 3 seasons over 10 sacks, 2-time Pro Bowler, 2-time second team All-Pro, and of course, also a 2-time Super Bowl champion, which would be a theme you'll see because most of these players really will be from either the
one era or another,
Wrecking Crew or the Eli era, basically. But yeah, it's definitely one of those. He's one of those players that I think Giant fans remember him better than NFL fans do, and I think what really took the hit with him, and I think also as we talked about the aforementioned Carl Banks as well, I think these guys both got hit by the same thing. People look at them and say, "Oh, well, he played with LT." They look at it from their perspective of, well, yeah, LT took double teams, and that freed up, guys like Leonard Marshall and Carl Banks, and it's not as impressive what they did because of that. And I'll say this part on that. We're not going to get into where he's on the list yet, but we all know that Michael Strahan's on this list somewhere. I think it's pretty obvious. If he was on this list, we should just quit the show now.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's giving anything away. Why does it no one ever say, oh, well, Justin Tuck and O.C. Umenyiora were so good because they had
Michael
Strahan getting double teamed? Like when a guy like JPP had his monster year, we had like 16 sacks. No one said, oh, Justin Tuck and OC are only so good because JPP is getting double teamed. I don't know why there's this stigma around players who played with LT about that. And obviously we talked about this a minute ago. You and I were freaking diapers when that era started. So it's like, it's not like we can sit there and say we watched it intently back then we were in preschool.
I mean, technically, it wasn't even a wet dream when that crew started.
Yeah, like, so it's like, yeah, it's a little, maybe somebody knows a little insight that wants to share in the comments section on their thoughts on that. I'm kind of curious, people that were around for those years there, but it's like, I never got the hate as far as that. Leonard Marshall, if you look at his stats here, he's at 83.5 sacks, which, again, very, very respectable. Now, let's look at, I'm going to Google this real quick because I wasn't even planning on talking about this, but it's coming up as far as that. So I'm going to think about it. Let's look at a guy like Howie Long. Howie Long played 81 to 93. Again, respectable player. Guy who's in the Hall of Fame there.
Guy who's in the Hall of Fame there.
Oh, we got a little bit of reverberation there. Got to hear myself talk there. Oh. But Howie Long, in the end, had a career 91.5 sacks.
Howie Long sacks. We talked about him.
You good, Rob? So, yeah, we had Leonard Marshall at 83.5 sacks. So is Howie Long a better player? Yes, Howie Long was a better player. But what I'm getting at is the difference that great. Leonard Marshall is a borderline Hall of Fame kind of player. Wasn't quite Hall of Fame, but he's a borderline guy. He'd be in the Hall of Very Good. So why there's so much hate for this guy, I never have gotten. I feel like that's what it's all about. Is people are like, oh, well, he played with LT. He got that help from that. Help or not, everyone gets help in some way, shape, or form, and he did what he had to do with that help. So we're not going to be that way here. So Leonard Marshall, like I said, definitely making it there onto the list. Very impressive career. Next up, Osi Umenyiora, second round pick in 2003. Played with us from 2003 to 2013. So 11-year career overall. Played 9 seasons with us, played his last 2 with the Atlanta Falcons. Sat out all of 2008 with a torn meniscus as well. So he really, even though he played 11 seasons, he really only played 10 seasons overall. For his career, 85 sacks, 75 of which was with the Giants. So 75 sacks in 8 years. That's pretty damn impressive overall. And I think one of the big reasons Giants fans just like have a huge, admiration for this guy, besides the fact that, again, he played during a good era, he's got the 2 Super Bowl rings, is I think everybody remembers one game in specific when Osi Umenyiora got 6 sacks against the hated, despised, reviled Philadelphia Eagles. 6 sacks in one game. That's, like I said, that's about as good as it gets in a game. That's absolutely amazing there. And it's one of the most dominating games that I've ever watched one single Giant destroy another team like that. I mean, you could not stop him. So again, overall for his career, 85 sacks, had 3 seasons over 10. All of those 3 were with us with the Giants. He was, in 2005, the Pro Football Writer Association's most improved player. He was a one-time first-team All-Pro, a one-time second-team All-Pro. In 2005, he was 4th in voting for Defensive Player of the Year from the AP. 2-time Pro Bowler, 2-time Super Bowl champ. Like I said, just a guy that was one hell of a player, one hell of a great career. And, it's somebody I enjoyed watching for many years, that's for sure. So, Rob, I know you're having the reverberation issue. I'm going to pipe down for a second so you can give your thoughts. We lose you, Rob. We still got you. You're muted now. Hold on. You muted yourself.
Hold on. You muted yourself.
Yeah, I muted myself. Yeah, I'm having headphones difficulties right now. But yeah, that the game against the Eagles was phenomenal. Like, that was pure dominance. But yeah, he had a stellar career with us, and
Yep. All right. So next up on the list.
All right. So.
Whoop. Looks like you got to mute when I on your end there, Rob. Just not let me do it.
Looks like you got to mute when I on your end.
There we go. All right. Next up, we have a guy that didn't necessarily have as long a career with the New York Giants as some of us would have liked, but a guy that was extremely dominant in his time with that. Who's this boomer bust we talked about a minute ago, like the boomer bust kind of player. This was the guy who was that kind of player. He'd have seasons where all of a sudden he'd go off for 16, 13 sacks, and then he'd kind of disappear for a year or two. Get like 3 or 4 sacks there for a couple seasons, or 6 sacks, and then all of a sudden go back to 12 sacks the next season. He was a little inconsistently dominant, if that makes sense. But when he was on his game, there was pretty much not a better player on the field, let alone position, let alone use, than Jason Pierre-Paul, JPP, a.k.a. Clubber Lang.
You know me.
From having this. Yeah, he was. I think all of us remember him overall for the fireworks issue he had, where he lost. What did he lose, like 2.5 fingers or something like that? I mean,
yes, for $7 million. Yes, for $7.5 million.
Yeah, that's like I said, I think we'll all remember that. But when he was on his game, like I said, he was on his game. 15th overall pick in 2010. Played with the Giants from 2010 to 2017. Played with the Bucks 18 to 21. Played with the Ravens last season. He had 58.5 sacks with the Giants in his 8 years. 94.5 sacks overall for his career. If he gets another year or two in the NFL, he's going to crack 100 sacks. That's impressive. That's a number that to me is like a whoa kind of thing.
Especially a couple of lackluster years.
Yeah. Like, that's not even like a Joey Lawrence from Blossom kind of whoa. It's just to go whoa.
Whoa.
You hit 100 sacks. That's impressive. You did something right. So he had 2 seasons. He had 2 seasons with the Giants where he got over 10 sacks. He had a third season. He had another one with the Bucks as well. He was a one-time first-team All-Pro, 2 Pro Bowlers with the 2-time Pro Bowler with the Giants, third again, one more time with the Bucks he got as well. 2011, which was his breakout season. Coincidence? That ring a bell that year? Yeah, that's their Super Bowl, or last Super Bowl there. He was 4th overall in the AP Defensive Player of the Year voting. 1-time Super Bowl champ with the Giants, 2-time overall, because he did get that second one with the Bucks. And like I said, I think people remember him because of the fireworks incident, and that should be not forgotten. It should be a lesson of why you don't hold on to a firework when it's lit.
Yeah.
Because I don't care. Listen, I have set off fireworks. Living in Florida, they're already setting up the stands right now for 4th of July. Like, it's a thing we do. Fireworks here. You go into like New Year's Eve, and when the clock strikes midnight, every single house is lighting off fireworks. It feels like some neighborhoods. So I'm not anti-fireworks, but maybe don't light them in your hand. Call me crazy.
Yeah.
So, all right. Before we get to the bottom 4 here, a top 4, I should say. We have 1, 2, 3. Yep, 4 more. Let's go over the rest of the comments here. John says, BBK, what the heezy? That's another show. Like I said, hopefully Tudo will put the link in there for you guys. My dad says, I joined late. Did you talk about George Martin left yet? We did not. That might be foreshadowing something. John Anderson says, Rutrow, Roberto having issues, LOL.
Right,
Ross
wrong.
says, loved that game 6 sacks. Actually could have had 8. I remember Strahan doing the we're not worthy with arms going up and down. Yeah, he did that. I forgot about that. Good call, John. Yeah, that was like, I'm telling you, that's the most dominating game I've ever seen from pass rusher live in person. You know, it's just, and to have it against the Eagles was just that much more special. It really was. I got to wonder if the Eagle fans think of that like we think of Deshaun Jackson returning that punt. I have to wonder that.
That difficult because that was also when Michael Vick was the quarterback and the guy that was playing fantasy football had Michael Vick and Deshaun. And the two of them got 100 points.
Yeah.
Knocking out the playoffs.
Some of us care about real football, not not fantasy football.
I care about both. I win money.
My dad says we have a thunderstorm rolling through, so I'm not getting a good signal. Yeah, you guys, welcome to Florida life. We get it every night.
Yeah.
John says, I think you should get the Podcast for Dummies book. You know, it's funny you mentioned that, John. As here it is, the Podcasting for Dummies book, right there in my hand. This is how quickly we take feedback from the watchers of the show. Okay, instantaneously. You asked, and here it is. I just bought it.
You shall receive.
Amazon is that quick. It was a 30-second delivery. It goes right on the shelf here, along with the New York Giants, Tales from the New York Giants sideline there by Paul Schwartz as well. So, alrighty. Let's see. John also says, my other daughter used to yell, "It's JPP, Daddy. You down with JPP?" Yeah, you know I'm a dad. LOL. And John says, "I knew it." LMFAO. Listen, when you start off a podcast, you don't know what you're doing. You get that. See, you know what the book is? I still want to see, by the way, when they talk about the For Dummies series. I want to see them have a book that says, dealing with low self-esteem for dummies. I mean, they already have low self-esteem. They already consider themselves dummies. I think it'd be like the perfect one at that point.
Why am I so stupid?
I'm such a dummy. Let me read this book. Oh, this makes sense.
I just want to buy it. I couldn't want to go to Barnes & Noble.
Alrighty. Next up on the list, number 4. And this is the guy that my dad was asking about here when he said, join late, do you talk about George Martin? Yeah, we did not. We did not talk about George Martin. We did not talk about Ricky Martin. We did not talk about George R.R. Martin. But now we're going to talk about George Martin. It's funny, actually, when I was looking.
We're living the Vida Loca right now.
When I was looking for pictures, because we make the thumbnail for the videos for YouTube and for Facebook, and I think LinkedIn uses the thumbnail as well. I think there's the 3 that do. I was looking for a George Martin picture, and every time I did, it kept coming up with George R.R. Martin. I'm like, no, not the Game of Thrones, the Giants, damn it. So George Martin was an 11th round pick in 1975. 11th round.
It's insane.
Yeah.
Thank goodness they changed up that draft.
I should also comment while this is still a thing, because this is no longer going to be a thing after the next player. We're on number 4. And only one player in the first 6 was a guy that was not homegrown, drafted, developed with the Giants. That's pretty impressive. You don't see that nowadays, really. But yeah, George Martin, like I said, 11th round pick, 1975, played with the Giants from 75 to 88. So 14 seasons. In those 14 seasons, 96 sacks.
So close.
That's pretty impressive. We just talked about JPP a minute ago, who played last season with the Ravens. So he played for 13 seasons, has 94.5 sacks overall. These guys are on point. Just to give you a comparison as far as how good George was, especially for the younger people who may be watching that didn't get a chance to watch him play. I mean, hell, he retired when I was 6. How much did I really get to see him play? But
yeah, barely walking.
He had a damn good career. This is a guy that I feel like kind of falls through the cracks. We talk about the great players for the Giants, the great pass rushers, it's obviously a very deep position overall. But this is the guy that I would imagine, I have to look it up to verify, but I have to imagine in some teams he'd be the best pass rusher they ever had, just sack numbers alone wise.
Yeah, I mean, he played in today's day and age. Getting that, like, he'll have a lot more recognition.
Yeah, I mean, that's, and I think it's also because of when he played. So when he played in the beginning, he was on crap teams. Let's be honest, the Giants were crap back then. So you don't get a lot of, recognition when you play in a bad team. And then he gets really good. The team gets really good, and he's overshadowed now by LT. So he never got the recognition. The guy didn't make a single Pro Bowl. Not a single Pro Bowl, not a single All-Pro, first team, second team, not any of that stuff. But he consistently averaged sack after sack. It's 96 sacks over 14 seasons. That average is almost 7 sacks a season. That's
my man had big sack.
Pretty damn impressive. 4 seasons with sacks over 10. Got the 1 Super Bowl ring in 86 as well. So glad he got that at least before he got a chance to retire there. Yeah, and my dad just brings up a very good point. He said, think about the game has evolved into the pass happy league that it is now. There's many more sack opportunities now. 100% correct. That's a good point. I didn't think about that part of it. So you're talking about a team, you get it. Back then, guys would go like 3,000 yards and they'd be amazing quarterbacks. You get 3,000 yards now, you might be looking for it to be benched soon.
Pretty much.
Unless you're Daniel Jones, then we pay you.
I was going to go there too, so sorry.
Oh, took the small shot. It's okay. But so yeah, I mean, getting 96 sacks in an era that people weren't really throwing the ball like that, it's pretty damn impressive. Like I said, I don't think he gets the recognition that he deserved for what he did. But I also don't think he got the recognition back then that he deserved.
No, but like you said, you play for a terrible team, you play for a long time, you do well, but just you don't get the recognition because the team's not winning. And then you got LT.
I think that's what it was. I really do. So but if you look at some of the numbers, but if you look at some of the numbers he had, like 10 sacks in 78, 11 sacks 79, 11 sacks in 81, 10 sacks in 85. He also never had that huge dominant season. This was your consistent guy. And I think maybe that hurt him to a certain degree as well, because you look at a guy like Justin Tuck, for example, that Giant fans still remember. Justin Tuck, as good as he was not nearly as consistent a player as I think some of us remember, because of the fact that he had the really good seasons. Yeah. This guy was just a consistent guy. He didn't have, 12, 13 sacks a season. He was like, okay, I'm going to barely hit 10 a couple times. But there's still something to be said for the guy who's just consistently does it. And he consistently did it for, 14 seasons with the same team. So, kudos to him, because that's one hell of a career.
Impressive.
Now we're on to the only oldie we're going to really talk about here. So we should kind of go over the history. We should go over the kind of the history here on the sacks and the recording of sacks and that kind of stuff. So for those who aren't aware, for most of the NFL's history, the NFL did not count sacks. So there's generations of players that we have no clue how many sacks they got. We have no clue how dominant they were. They weren't recording QB hits or pass rush percentage and all this kind of stuff. It was just a tackle. That's all it was. So before 1981, I want to say it was, before 82, sorry. Sack was not an official stat. Was not something they recorded down saying, oh, look, he got 3 sacks today in the game. Like, no, it wasn't talked about. They would say he got 7 tackles.
3 tackles, yeah.
Yeah, So somebody went back to 1960. And for the NFL, they did unofficial sack totals for those years. And it's anybody before 1960, you don't have a single clue as far as how many sacks they did still to this day. We have one guy who played in the middle of that era that Rob and I were talking before the show. I would love if they could actually go back and get his actual official sack total. Because what we do have,
one of the best ever.
What we do have is goddamn impressive. Andy Robustelli. He was the 19th. I know. Are you coughing? Are you sneezing? Have trouble sleeping? Try Robustelli. There was a couple quarterbacks got a little tired after getting hit by him a couple times.
A little drowsy. Be careful driving afterwards.
Back then, it was just seeing stars. There was no concussions.
Yeah.
19th round pick in 1951 from Arnold College, a very small school. He wasn't even intended to ever make it in the NFL. He was supposed to be a camp body, basically, when they drafted him that. And they even said that he was a Ram initially. So he played for the Giants 1956 to 1964. He was traded by the Rams to the Giants. Played initially with the Rams from 51 to 55. So he had 9 seasons in total with the Giants. As we said, the only time that we had the sack numbers official, I should say that, even unofficial on him.
Yeah, unofficially.
1960 and onward. That's his last 4 seasons. I'm sorry, last 5 seasons. That's all we have. 5 seasons of, data on him that's not even considered official on how good he was. Now, keep in mind the years I said he played. 51 to 64. He didn't start playing till he was 26 years old. So we're talking about his age. The years we're talking about with his sacks that we do know of were his years 35 years old to 39 years old. Because that's how long he played. Think about that. 35.
We can play now about our back and how we feel. This dude's knocking people out.
So, late 30s, you're probably thinking in your head, he probably didn't have a lot of unofficial sacks at that point. We're probably just guessing how many sacks he had for his prime. You'd be wrong. In that time frame, the 5 years, he had 52 and a half sacks in 68 games. That's a 0.77 sack average. In other words, he had 3/4 of a sack, just a little bit over, on average, for those 5 years. That is on pace with LT. That's what we're kind of talking about here. And this was his 35 to 39 years. This is not his prime. Yeah. So we did the math on that. We're about to say, let's do the math. No, we already did the math because you know me. I love doing math and I love projecting and doing averages and stuff like that. Rob loves it. It's like his favorite joy in life is me projecting numbers. But I like to do that because it kind of gives me an idea of, okay, if this was that, what would we be looking at? Okay. If, hypothetically, he had done that average for his entire career, and I have no clue better or worse because again, there's no sack number, so it's all just projections right now.
In the air.
If he had done that for his career, he would have gotten 175 sacks.
It's a lot of sacks.
That would put him 3rd place behind only Reggie White and Bruce Smith. That's how impressive of a career we're talking about. And you have to assume, I mean, I could be wrong because, again, it's an assumption, but you have to assume his numbers may have very well been better because of the fact that he was younger. This was his prime years not being counted. He may actually be the NFL sack leader all time. But we
Yeah,
don't
I mean-
know that. And that's what stops him from being number one. Because we're having to do assumptions and guesses, basically.
And we also did not watch
So
10 years of football to get their actual count. It's a lot of games.
well, yeah, that's what we'd have to watch. Basically, is go back and watch all the classic games, which I do think the NFL should have somebody do. I still think that because it's not fair to history to not have those numbers there. So,
Yeah.
he would have. Oh, you know what? I'm sorry, I messed up the numbers at that point. I messed up the numbers. I'm in my own notes that I'm messing it up. So we had 175 games played. That would have put him at 135 sacks overall. That would have put him number 13. That's still damn impressive. Number 13 to ever play the game.
And he played it 7 years ago.
That would have put him in range with guys like Jared Allen, John Abraham, John Randall, DeMarcus Ware, guys who we're talking like best of the best kind of players. Also puts him right there with LT.
Yeah, best of the best, sir.
Best of the best, sir. This guy's so excited. He's in the wise here. I love that movie. So 3 seasons over 10 of those 5 that we saw. That's pretty impressive. 1962, he had the Burt Bell Award, which is the equivalent of the MVP. 5 Pro Bowl seasons with the Giants, 7 overall. 4 first team All Pro, 6 overall. 2-time AP second team, 4 overall. 1-time NFL champ with the New York Giants. 2-time overall NFL champ. He had one with the Rams as well. Hall of Famer. So this is not the Hall of Very Good. This is the Hall of Very Fame.
Yeah.
The Hall of Famer.
All of it.
He was also quite the once a Giant, always a Giant kind of guy. So he was the defensive coordinator from 62 to 64 under Ali Sherman. We talked about him. We talked about best coaches in Giants history. And then he later on would be the director of operations, which is basically the GM. It had a different name for it. General manager wasn't really a term thrown around like that. Wellington Mara was kind of known for making all the decisions on the team back then. This is the one guy who was able to get a little say in. It was Andy Robustelli, director of operations from 1973 to 1978. When he was let go from that role, you know who took over for him? George Young. George Young. One of the better moves the Giants ever made. Getting Wellington Mara to stop meddling.
Yeah.
Listen, it worked for so many years. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to say he was crud for the team. He was one of the most important people ever, to be involved, and not just because he owned the team, but because he made a lot of the decisions, and a lot of the decisions were very right for a lot of years. But in the 70s, not so much. So again, Andy Robustelli. Take a look at some tape, because I watched some tape from this guy, and I was impressed. He wasn't. We talked about some of the offensive linemen back then. You're like, 200 pounds offensive tackle. Like, this wasn't that guy. Like, he was. I think it was. I actually got the numbers in front of me here, so I happen to have his numbers up. He was 6'1", 230 pounds. So he'd be smaller for nowadays, but he wasn't a small guy by any means. This wasn't the 5'10", 103 pounds.
Yeah. The little Giants over here.
Yeah. I use yeast for acid indigestion. Going to a rat tad.
Yeah.
Like I said, I another guy that I think, if you're a big fan of the Giants, this is a guy that if you're looking at following up on history and learning on the history of the players, that's a guy as well. So that's your 2 people to watch homework on: George Martin and Andy Robustelli. Because I think the next 2 guys you're going to be very, very familiar with. I think that's
I would hope so.
And if they're not, welcome to the Two Giant Goofball podcast and Giant fandom overall, because obviously you're new. Number 2.
Who does number 2 work for?
ABC,
Yeah.
Disney, technically. Michael Strahan, the guy who clearly shops at the Gap.
Well, that's where his braces shopped.
Yeah. So second round draft pick in 1993. Played from 93 to 2007. So 15 seasons. That's a pretty damn impressive long career. And the crazy thing is, he could have still played. There's not a doubt in my mind that if Michael Strahan wanted to continue, and I'm not blaming him when I say it that way, because in the end, you stop playing when you don't want to play anymore. Whether it's your body telling you that or your mind telling you that. When you don't want to play anymore, you stop.
Plus, he doesn't have to get beat up.
Oh, yeah. He hangs out with Good Morning America crew and Kelly Ripa instead.
Yeah.
So 9 sacks his last year, though, at the age of 36. So don't get me wrong, 36 is an appropriate time to retire for most players. But he went out on top, getting that ring, having a good last season. So, always good to be able to go out on top. And I think that might have been part of his thought process on that, honestly. So 141 sacks in his career. He's number 6 all time in sacks. Pretty impressive. For his career, 5 seasons over 10. Led the league twice in sacks. First time was 2001 when he had 22 and a half sacks. And that was a record that was very controversial. It's one of those things where people still look at it and go, did Brett Favre let him have that one? And the record obviously has, it's an official stat still that he's technically tied with TJ Watt for. Though if you want to get technical about it, if you want to go with the unofficial stats, Al Baker of the Detroit Lions 1978 had 23 sacks unofficially. So he's technically the sack leader. But the official sack leader, Michael Strahan, ties with TJ Watt for it at 22 and a half sacks. And people were pretty upset when that happened. I remember people flipping out, oh, Brett Favre gave him that one. Sometimes that just happens when a guy knows he's going to go down anyway. He just kind of goes down willingly. So it's hard to say if Brett Favre did something because he thought he was doing a solid to Strahan, or if he actually was going to go down. But I can say this. Brett Favre, from everything we've learned about him in the last 10, 15 years, I think it's safe to say he's probably not the nicest guy in the world, which is a shame because I really enjoyed watching him play. I was obviously a Giant fan first, but I was a Brett Favre fan overall and how he played, the gunslinger mentality, how he played in that big game right after his father died, that kind of stuff. But
I want to buy Wrangler jeans because of him.
I brought my Coppertone.
Yeah.
I think it's safe to say he's probably not a nice guy.
He could be a nice guy. He just does a little shady business and thinks about himself.
That's not nice. Therefore, not a nice guy.
Yeah.
I don't think he's the guy that would have done that, just based on what we know now of him. So the second time he did it was 2003, where he had 18 and a half sacks. So 7-time Pro Bowler, 4-time first-team All-Pro, 2-time second-team All-Pro, 2001 AP Defensive Player of the Year, 2001 Pro Football Writer Association Defensive Player of the Year, 1-time Super Bowl champ, NFL 2000s All-Decade Team, and, of course, Hall of Fame. Yeah. That's solid career. And he was also a guy that was very much a team leader. He was the one who kept giving kudos to Tom Coughlin his last year. He played when Coughlin kind of loosened up a little bit and did a little more team activities and did a little team building. So, he was a guy who was very well respected. And I think when he won Strahan over, that's when Coughlin started taking off, so to speak, there, because Strahan meant a lot to that locker room. Strahan was the guy.
Yeah.
You got in with Strahan, you were good. Now, here's the crazy part. I don't want to give away too much. I don't want to get people in trouble. But I knew someone who worked for a company that basically what that company did was rent furniture. So that person worked with a lot of professional athletes. And what they would do is when they came into town to go, play, they would live elsewhere in the off season, obviously. So when they came into town, they would rent some furniture out for the season, basically. And they didn't have nice things to say about Strahan. I'll put it that way. And I've heard some mixed on him outside of his TV personality and his goofiness that he shows on TV. And, he always seems happy. So, I don't know. There's rumors that he's kind of that fake happy guy. I don't know.
He's like an Ellen DeGeneres.
Maybe.
Turn off cameras.
Maybe.
Yell at everyone.
Like I said, I don't want to say it as fact because I don't talk to this person anymore. I can't, go ahead through and verify or ask specifics. And they didn't want to get into specific stories with me because I wasn't somebody that I knew very well. It was kind of somebody I knew for a time period of my life. I'll put it that way. So, like I said, who knows? But I've heard other similar stories. So, but hopefully he is as jolly and happy as he seems on TV because that's always nice.
I hope so.
I hope so. I like to hope so. I hope for that, and Santa Claus is still real.
Me too.
That brings us
to what?
That brings us to number one.
Who can it be now?
Number one. Kenny Galladay. No. Kenny Galladay is number one in every category. Of course, it's going to be the GOAT. Of course, it's going to be the GOAT. It's got to be the GOAT. I mean, who else could it possibly be other than the GOAT himself? I mean, this is a guy that point blank goes down as the best pass rusher in NFL history. That's what happens there. I mean, there he goes. So,
you ever hear a goat scream, by the way?
Oh, I've heard of them screaming goats like Whitney Houston.
Oh, yeah.
The YouTube.
They scream like real people dying in the middle of the night.
They're also good for yoga.
Apparently.
This yoga thing with goats climbing all over you. That's a little weird to me. But yeah, Lawrence Taylor, also known, of course, by his initials, LT. And when you have an initial or something, a shortened version of your name, and that's all people need to hear to know who you are, that you had a damn good career. There's not many players that you say two letters and you know who we're talking about. Second overall pick in 1981. Played from 81 to 93, so 13 seasons as a whole. 142 sacks in that time frame. 7 seasons over 10 sacks. 7. Think about it. We were just talking about Strahan, who is one of the best ever. 5 seasons in 15 seasons. This guy had 7 in 13. So more seasons than not, he had over 10 sacks in the season. And he was a linebacker. He wasn't a pure pass rusher. That's what made this guy so good. He did it all. He covered. He stopped the run and sacked the quarterback. I mean, I remember watching tape on him where he like sacked the quarterback one play, and then like all of a sudden he'd go back in coverage and get an interception and run it back for a touchdown the next play. He was all over the place, and that's what's so amazing about it. He wasn't a pin your ears back and go for the quarterback. He was everywhere. He is the GOAT. He is the best player to ever play on the defensive side of the ball. And I know I'm a Giant fan, obviously, so I know I'm biased. But I'm telling you guys point blank, he was that good. Absolutely was that good. He changed the entire dynamic of games. Led the league in 86 was the only time he ever led the league in sacks with 20.5 sacks. That's pretty damn good. That's still tied for 8th best ever as far as the officials since 82. Overall, for his career, he was 10-time Pro Bowler, 3-time AP Defensive Player of the Year. Yeah, we're talking about players that are top 10. Like, oh, you were fourth once. 3 times he won the award in 13 seasons. So basically, a quarter of the time the seasons he played, he was the best player in the best defensive player of the year. He got second place also in 84, fourth place in 83, and sixth place in 88. So that's 6. Almost half of his seasons he would play. That's insanity. On top of that, 1986, he was the MVP of the league. When do you ever hear of a guy who plays defense getting MVP? Doesn't happen.
Yeah, when was the last time?
Doesn't happen. Last time was 86 with Lawrence Taylor.
Yeah.
That's because that's how unheard of it is. He was also the 2-time NFC Player of the Year. So not just did he win the MVP in 86, he won the NFC Player of the Year in 86, along with 83 as well. 8-time first team All-Pro. 8 times, guys. 13 seasons. Yeah. 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 I'm just like, you look at this guy's numbers and it's just absolutely amazing. It's 2-time second team All-Pro. So you're talking about 10 seasons out of the 13. He was the first or second best player at his position in the entire NFL. That's just absolutely unheard of.
Top of the world.
And you can also make the case that this is an issue overall, like Michael Jordan. Like Michael Jordan couldn't win MVP every single season. He was the best player every year in the league, but they had to switch it up a little bit. And that's what I feel like happened here.
Yeah.
LT was the best at his position every single year. I'm sorry. He was that good. You know, you can make the case the last 3 seasons, but he started getting hurt a little more. Maybe not then. But overall, he was the best player on the entire defensive side of the ball every single year. So basically from 81 to 90, that's how good he was. He started, like I said, last couple of years, he started dropping down a little. He played 14 games in 91, 9 in 92. Played all as last year, but only had 6 sacks at 34 years old in 93. So he was definitely, at that point, starting to slow down a little bit. But overall,
yeah, coming off a couple injuries, yeah.
Entire 80s, he was you could make the case that he was the best player in the league in the entire 80s. You could make that case, I think, that he was the best player in the entire league. I don't get me wrong. There's going to be guys you would talk about like Joe Montana and Jerry Rice and those kind of guys that you could say were the best players of that generation as well. But LT's in that conversation. Whether he wins is probably just based on how much you value a pass rusher over a quarterback or a wide receiver. You know, I'd probably give it to Joe Montana, as much as I hate to say so, because he played quarterback, and that's probably the only reason why. But LT was the best defensive player of that entire decade, hands down, not even close second. Hall of Fame all 1980s team. He's part of the NFL 75th anniversary all-time team, the NFL 100th anniversary all-time team. He was the defensive rookie of the year in 1981, 2-time Super Bowl champ, Hall of Famer, and of course, as I look at my notes, the very last award that I listed for him was very simply the GOAT.
Yes.
I think the last one.
Little startle there, huh?
Yeah, like someone took his temperature or something. But I mean, that's just how good a player he was. And again, he's another guy that I'll encourage you if you were, too young to watch him play, or you don't really know quite how good he was. Do yourself a favor and rewatch some of those games that he played. I'm telling you, he was that good. It was just, he was everywhere. There was not a single part of the game that he was not good at. he would just tear down running backs. He would just just give quarterbacks nightmares. He would cover guys. I mean, it's just like there was not a single thing this man could do except put down the straw and stop doing cocaine. That's the one thing
I was
he
about to
could
say it's crack.
Yes. He was definitely had a bit of a drug problem. And
But it was the 80s. Hey,
listen, it was the 80s, and he was nice. He even shared hookers and cocaine with his fellow with his opposing teams. No, seriously, that's the story. That's they verified. He's even said point blank he did it. He wanted to tire out the opposing teams before he played them. So he'd find out what hotel they were staying at, and he would send cocaine and hookers to their rooms. That's 100% true story. That's not a BS thing. That's 100%.
I forgot about that.
Like, if that's not a team leader, I don't know what is.
Right. Guys, I just spent $5,000 on coke and boobs.
Yeah, I mean, I know LT got his own little trouble with hookers and all. We're not going to get into the whole underage girl thing because.
As you bring it up.
What? I know. I bring it up. I don't want to sit there and say honest. I didn't like follow it to the point where I know all the details fully on it. I just know that he said that his understanding was she was over the age of 18. So, without knowing all the details, I'm not going to sit there and judge as far as that.
Yeah.
I couldn't care less to be paid for sex. What's the difference between that and paying for a steak and then hoping for something afterwards? You're just increasing your odds. Sorry.
Pretty much.
I'm just saying it like it is. So
get right to the point.
Exactly. You don't have to buy 10 drinks at a dinner and hope for the best. You got it right there. You're good. You do the cost up front. But yeah, I mean, like I said, again, though, absolute GOAT. And you look at this list, and that's what I was saying about top heavy. LT, Strahan, and Robustelli. 3 of the best pass rushers to ever play the game. One of them being potentially the best ever. And yeah, I mean, guys, this is a group that the Giants, you want to talk about a group the Giants are known for. This is that group. This is a group that I think most teams would, if they could sit back and say, we're going to trade your pass rushers, your history with the Giants, I think they would all say, sign me up in a freaking heartbeat. Including the Eagles and the Cowboys. That's through the career, through the franchise of the Giants, we've had 2 things that have been pretty solid: quarterbacks and pass rushers. What have I always said? If you got a good quarterback, if you can control the line of scrimmage, good things are going to happen. It's that simple. And for all the times that things that changed in football over the years, for all the differences that we've seen over time, whether it become, the lesser and lesser role of running backs, the crazy formations you now see and stuff like that. In the end, that's never changed. If you can get to the quarterback and you can protect your quarterback and you can have a good quarterback, you're probably going to win most games. It's not rocket science, guys. It's not rocket science. And the Giants, again, we talked about the history here. Like let's look at the 86 team, for example. You got Lawrence Taylor on this list. You got George Martin on this list. You got Leonard Marshall on this list. You got Carl Banks and Eric Howard on the honorable mention. That's 5 of the 13 players we talked about here in this. Then you go to like the 07 and 2011 when we talked about that. You had Strahan or JPP, depending on which one you're talking about. You had Tuck. You had OC. You had Matthias Kiwanuka. There's the 5 again.
Prince Calabunga.
Yeah. That's, like I said, that's pretty impressive. And that's why we've got those 4 rings. That's why we had those 4 Super Bowls, is because we made it hell for the opposing quarterbacks.
Yeah.
It's not difficult. It's a very simple formula. All right, we got a couple more comments here before we get going here for the night, guys. So first, John Anderson, Alley with an I, original Karate Kid reference. LOL. Oh yes, I forgot that. Wax on, wax off. That kid was such a bad actor. I'm sorry, Ralph Macchiano. As good as that movie was, he was not a good actor. He's still not.
I mean, he was good, let's say.
He's still not.
Watch Cobra Kai?
That's why I knew you were about to say that. So yeah, he wasn't that good in Cobra Kai either. It's the nostalgia. John Anderson also says, remember Fred Dreyer? He played TV cop show Hunter. Played for us for 3 years. 1969, round 1, pick 13. Went on to other teams. He had 103 sacks, 20 fumble recovers, 2 safeties in 1 game. And I remember him. And he's a guy that I think could have easily been put on this list. If he played for even 1 or 2 more years, he probably would have made it onto the list, to be very frank with you there. The problem is he just didn't play for us for very long there. He played for 4 seasons, had 29 sacks. So very similar numbers we talked about with Olivier Vernon, but had the 1 extra season. But he played for us his first couple of seasons, and that's the problem. I think if he'd been there for his heyday when he was with the Rams, he'd probably be very, very high on the list. So for those who aren't familiar with the name, he played for us from 69 to 71, had 29 sacks in the 4 seasons there, had just really the one really good season he had with the Giants. Actually, you know what? Yeah, was 12 sacks. But like I said, most of his heyday stuff was with the Rams. So I don't want to include him on our list because of the fact that, to me, he's a Ram. You know, and he should be on the Rams list. We really shouldn't put him on our list for that reason there. But yeah, 1 more season, I probably wouldn't have been able to not do that. But for now, that's where he ends up. Alrighty, guys. So let's see here. We got your dad pops on as well. We got both dads on today. He says LT was a game changer when they needed it. 100%.
100%, Dad. Hi, Dad.
Raphael says, hello, Drew and Rob. Salute from Raphael. Salute, Raphael. They did like the tool time salutes. He had like Al Borland.
Yeah.
John says, I Shot the Clerk is a classic from my cousin Vinny. Listen, we're just 2 Utes over here, okay?
Excuse me? What is a Ute?
I knew you'd get it. Alrighty, guys. So we'll be back on again for you guys Wednesday and Thursday. So heads up, I'm off on vacation. Hey, I'm on vacation, this TikTok says.
Goes bye. Bye.
So I'm going to be up at the lake in Georgia, my family's lake house. I'm going to be sitting in the Georgia clay with beers in hand, and will not be in a spot with a ton of Wi-Fi. So therefore, we're going to pre-record a couple episodes tomorrow night to go ahead and pop on for you guys there. So that way we won't be missing a game here. We'll, keeping our 100% attendance up there. Though I think I have one missed and you got 2 missed, right? Is that where we're at there?
Something like that, yeah.
Something like that. So that's still, we're like 140 episodes in. So that's pretty damn impressive, I think. But yeah, we're gonna have like I said, a couple good shows on for you guys there. We're talking about doing for better or for worse, talking about the positions down the team, and are we better than last year? Are we worse than last year? Are we kind of the same? We're also going to go over kind of where we think we are compared to the rest of the NFC East teams as well for you guys, kind of ranking the 4 teams here, because let's be honest, we sucked last year against the NFC East. Absolutely sucked.
Terrible.
Yeah. So wasn't for the Commanders, it'd be even worse. But in the end, we're 1-4-1. The fact that we got in the playoffs being 1-4-1 is just absolutely insanity. So
yeah,
we can't have that happen again. And you got to close the gap with some of the 2 big ones, obviously, the Cowboys and the Eagles. So we're going to talk about that and say, how good do we do and how close are we? So, of course, as always, Giant fans, if you're wondering all the different platforms we're on, if you're watching live, you're probably watching us on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, or, Rob favorite, my LinkedIn profile. Oh, yes, my LinkedIn profile. No one ever knows what to do with LinkedIn. I figured it out. It's for two giant goofballs. And of course, you can watch you can watch also not live afterwards once they're done as well. You can actually obviously the replay there. Also, of course, we're on every single audio platform pretty much known to man. So Spotify, Apple Podcast, Amazon, iHeartRadio, all that stuff there as well. And of course, if you like the show, of course, we invite you over again to buymeacoffee.com/2giantgoofballs. That's if you're watching on the video there, that's in the bottom center there is where that is. And of course, we also have our membership option as well. So we're going to do our first Q&A here, probably in a couple of weeks here. So that's something that you get as part of the membership there. So if you're enjoying the podcast and want to get a little more extra content as well, again, it's buymeacoffee.com/2giantgoofballs. Again, buymeacoffee.com/2 giant goofballs. Subscription started just $5 a month too as well. We're not trying to be those guys going for like $50, $100. Okay, we're not HBO. So every so often, Rob goes a little Skinamax style on us though. That's just in the subscription only one. Oh yes, shows a little skin. Alrighty, guys. So again, we'll be back on for you guys Wednesday. Again, not live, but we'll be here. We'll be there live in spirit as well. And of course, as John says, is that Twitter or Twatter? Well, ever since Eli bought it as Twatter, but but yeah, we'll be live. We'll be not so live, but we'll be live. The show will be premiering live on Wednesday and Thursday, so keep track there. And then starting again next week, we'll be back on our regular schedule there. Maybe we'll do something a little patriotic for 4th of July coming up soon too. Maybe we do something patriotic for Monday. That might be a kind of cool option there as well. So Rob and I will talk about that offline here in a minute because I just thought of that. I keep on forgetting the 4th of July is coming up. I've been so busy at work, but it's nice.
Next week.
We're closed on 4th of July. So therefore, it's one of the only 4 days that my job closes the entire year.
Yay.
It's Christmas, Thanksgiving, 4th of July, and Easter. It's the only 4 days we close. So I really enjoy it. It's a true day off. No one can even call me from work. So all right, Giant fans, again, we'll be back on here for you, not so live on Wednesday, Thursday. We'll see you again live for the next time as on Monday's show that we're just talking about there. As always, Giant fans, go G-Man! Go G-Man! Go G-Man! Out into the universe.
Thanks for listening to Two Giant Goofballs, a New York Giants podcast. We appreciate your support. If you made it this long, you must have enjoyed it. So I am sure you have followed us on all the social media platforms. Of course, you have subscribed to the show on your favorite app as well and given us a top rating. Right? Right? Right?